This is a Healthier Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Gaedica. And in this series, we're exploring the balance between nutrition and metabolism. Continuing with part 2 in our 4-part series, we're exploring how to optimize food choices to fuel our body. Back with us again is registered dietitian for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Shanti Appello, who's leading us through this series. So we'll get back to our conversation. I thought the last episode, the very first one of this series, was awesome. I mean, I learned a whole lot about metabolism, which is great.
Good. A little nutrition 101, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And we can apparently control what we eat, right? We all try to do that. And it seems like the right diet can make a big difference in how we're energized. You were talking about even from baby all the way up into our 90s, we can make a big difference with the right diet. So how do we balance diet and metabolism to ensure that we're feeling energized and satiated, that we're full through the day? What are some of the things to concentrate on?
Yeah. So when it comes to how foods kind of affect our energy level and our metabolism, I think we can touch on the metabolism side of things first.
Okay.
Last episode we talked about how there's 3 components that make up our metabolism. Our basal metabolic rate that makes up the biggest part, and then the energy that we use to move in our day, and then that thermic effect of food, which is 5 to 10% of our energy use, where our body needs to use energy to break food down and to get our nutrients to go the place they need to go.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this, it's important to understand that protein has a higher thermic effect than carbs and fat. So it's a good idea to get enough of it in our diet. Now, most Americans do get enough in terms of sustaining, our bodies, not having malnutrition and things like that. But there are some good calculators out there if you're curious about how much protein you need. I will say that a lot of people get recommended, at gyms and different places to consume perhaps a little bit more than you need. And so get down to the calculator, look at, your personal factors like your age and your activity level to determine that. But then there's this idea of, how different foods affect our energy. And this is where I think we can focus a little bit more of our conversation on.
And let me just go back a minute to these calculators, because I've tried to use those, and I'll tell you a place that I get a bit confused, and maybe I'm using a rudimentary calculator. I need a better one. But it will say multiply your body weight by, 0.4, blah, 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 gives you the calculation.
Oh, those are hard. Yeah.
Okay, so I convert, from kilograms to pounds. I do the math.
You're like, I passed 8th grade. Come on. Like, we don't need a, yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's where I get confused though, Shanti. I see the number come out and I'm like, okay, that's a lot of protein. But if I'm looking to drop 10 pounds, am I trying to eat the protein for the weight I am or the weight I want to be? Because I don't ever see that question come up. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. So we want to look at protein in the weight that you are.
Okay.
Yes. But also, when it comes to those calculators, oftentimes it's going to be the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation, I think. And that is basically the gold standard in terms of determining our energy needs. And usually what we say as a recommendation is that it's Mifflin-St. Jeor equation for, all the factors that play into your energy needs, like your age, your activity level, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Minus 500 calories a day. That's a safe place to be in terms of weight loss calorically.
Oh, interesting.
But the NIH has a really good calculator. We just want to make sure that we're using a reputable source. And what's great about that calculator is that you just input all the different factors and it does it for you. So you don't have to, you're like, I multiply first, subtract later.
Yeah, this new math the kids are using, that's what's throwing me. Well, what you just said, like the calculators I'm using, I won't go any farther into this, but if it's from the National Institute of Health, I'm going to search that one up because I'm not being asked for age or any other factors. It's just saying, give me your weight, multiplied by this, and here's your number. And I'm looking at it going, how many eggs can I eat in a day? It's just like nutty protein. So to be fair, as a guy, I am trying to lift weights and do the right stuff, but I'm not looking to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I don't want to bulk up.
I think that's an interesting thing to touch on too, just quickly, is that, and this was actually one of the bases of the research I did in school. because a lot of people associate protein intake with building muscle.
Yeah.
But the most important part of the muscle building is actually doing the activity itself. And then, of course, like the protein helps support that. But the most important thing we can do is, do the exercise.
Is the weightlifting or something, right? You're saying that's
Yeah.
the most important. Yeah.
Yes. And of course, getting enough protein does help with that. And the more exercise we do, generally, the more protein we need.
Okay.
And that's where that activity level
Yeah.
comes in.
So if you look at the kind of foods that we're ingesting through our day,
Yeah.
through our entire lives, what are some of the nutrient-rich foods that may actually be able to help boost our energy throughout the day?
Yeah, so I like to think about it in terms of how we digest certain foods. So, for example, if I'm drinking a sugary soda, that is mostly just sucrose, which is
Yeah.
something that's super easy for our body to break down. So, as soon as we ingest it, we start breaking it down, and that energy goes straight to our blood. It goes straight to our blood and then, into our cells to be used for energy immediately. Now, that doesn't give us the long lasting energy that we need. And so we need to look at things in terms of our preferred carbohydrate source, or preferred source of energy, I should say, which are carbohydrates that take longer to digest. So that means
Okay.
it's more complex. So our body's going to need to do a little bit more work. And that slows it down and makes sure that we're getting incremental energy and more sustained energy levels. So that means things that have a lot of fiber, things that are more complex. So, for example, when we look at white bread, not very complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been refined, it's ultra processed, it's, had all these processes where they're already broken down quite a bit for us. Versus if we look at a whole wheat bread with maybe some nuts and seeds and all kinds of things, it's more complicated for our bodies to digest. And so it's going to take longer. That fiber helps slow down the digestion process, and then we get more long lasting energy. So that's why, hearty carbohydrates from things like oats, brown rice and things like that are going to be great.
Man, am I feeling good about breakfast today now.
Oh, yeah. What did you have?
Big bowl of oatmeal, blueberries, a banana, some walnuts broken up, and a little bit of protein powder because I know I'm talking to Shanti, so I've got to carry some of that. But I feel really good now. It kind of sounds like I did the right stuff.
You did. Oats are a perfect part of breakfast. Also snacks if you wanted to fit that in. But other breakfast foods, ones that I'm particularly crazy about at the moment is chia seed pudding. I make it with some yogurt for protein.
Okay.
Some milk also has a little bit of protein, and then a little bit of nut butter. So I'm adding some healthy fats to the mix. Also getting, of course, fats and fiber from the chia seeds. And then I serve it with fruit. And I love it because it's this like pudding like texture. It's coming from that fiber, because whenever you get chia seeds wet, they kind of puff up. And that kind of gives you that sense of fullness, and also is a really nice texture. And then in mine, I love to add a ton of dark cocoa powder. So I'm not adding, chocolate per se in terms of like the fat and stuff, but that cocoa powder has the fiber, the antioxidants, and a really nice flavor. So that's been my go-to.
Very cool. So are we missing any other nutrient-rich foods that should be helping us?
Of course, when we're thinking about nutrients, we want the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, and things like that to help fuel our bodies in other ways. Like they help the processes that help our metabolism. And so it's going to be important to get those 5 fruits and vegetables a day. And so, if you're thinking about a snack, an apple is great, especially when it has the peel on it, because it's got that fiber. It's going to give you some long lasting energy because of that, because it's going to take a moment to digest, but it's also fueling us with a lot of nutrients, like the vitamins and minerals that we need.
And the old adage, apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's a lot to that. And what's interesting is you say apple, and I'm thinking, well, there's still sugar in it, but it's not the vacuous pound down the drink and get the spike from the sugar. You're still getting all the other goodness in the apple. I know it's got sugar, but it's a whole different kind of ball game.
Yeah, and we shouldn't really worry about the sugar that's found in fruit unless we're adding it to it, right? Yeah. And so that's what we should think about throughout the day. Are we getting these hearty carbohydrate sources, because our brains really do need that energy in forms of glucose, or the simple form of carbohydrates to get fueled. And I think a lot of us get afraid of carbohydrates. These low carb diets have shown to be, produce a lot of weight loss over the years for people, though we see that, they're not a lot long lasting weight
Yeah.
loss. But I think it's made a lot of people afraid of consuming carbohydrates. So it's just comes down to we should be eating them, but let's make sure that they're from healthy sources.
So, what about specific foods or even eating habits? You'll see these things, I wouldn't even call them studies. Maybe sometimes they're related to a study. If you chew more when you're eating your food, you'll work off more calories. All these ideas that come along. But what about specific foods and even eating habits? Maybe that is one of them that can improve metabolic efficiency.
Yeah, so eating regular meal times, that's going to help. So,
Oh,
our 5 small meals a day, that's going to help keep metabolism at a steady rate. Another thing that we can do is just make sure that we're staying hydrated throughout the day because that helps us not feel so sluggish, prevents that brain fog, but it also helps our metabolism function the way that it should.
yeah.
Some research says that eating like hot chilies and green tea is going to help boost our metabolism. It could maybe a smidgen, but not enough to really make a difference. So that's not really something we should be focusing on as like specific foods necessarily, but more so just, making sure that we're eating regularly and also getting some exercise in.
So you mentioned last episode on this one, this idea of 5 meals a day, or
Yeah.
I asked that question about three with maybe two healthy snacks. For a lot of us, that's not been the habit we have. So you're encouraging us to really go a little broader than just 3 meals a day and then wait for later tonight while some binging some show to eat some snacks to put in these two other healthy meals, even small ones, or snacks, right?
Right, the snacks. And one of the big reasons for that is that whenever we've gone too long without eating and it's time to eat finally, a lot of people go overboard and they're eating faster because they're trying to
Ah,
satiate that hunger. And it takes like 15-20 minutes for our brain to recognize that we're full. And so it's a good idea that we're entering the meal not feeling, out of control, hungry. Instead, we're just at a steady rate, kind of satisfying our hunger throughout the day.
yeah, yeah. So when you think about some people, and I know some have, some people will have insulin issues, diabetes or something, but the connection between blood sugar regulation and sustained energy levels, what is that connection?
Yeah, so that's another good point to like eating regular meals throughout the day is that it keeps your blood sugar level stable. And for
Ah,
most people who don't have diabetes, our blood sugar levels tend to stay pretty stable. Now they can get on the lower side and that can, make us feel fatigued. It can decrease our energy. It can make us have, some mood swings up and down. And so it's a good idea to keep that stable because it's going to help us just more efficiently work throughout our day and feel better. So, again, that's why eating regularly is a good idea.
and then adding those sugary drinks in parts of your day, does that not create a spike then? Don't you feel like you've climbed the mountain and like, oh, yeah, this is giving me, or maybe it's psychological, a little boost, but then coming back down from that sugar high, that's not always going to make for a great rest of your day either, is it?
Yeah, so you're right that it does create a spike because when we think about a drink, for example, that has 50 grams of sugar,
Yeah.
I told you earlier in the episode that we break it down immediately in
Yeah.
our body. And then, it's in the blood, it's going to the cells. And then we got this like overload of nutrients or sorry, of energy. And so it's bound not to last very long and you might feel really sluggish afterwards. So that's a good point. Another thing is that, if we're eating regularly throughout the day, we're getting the nutrients that we need and we get to, have a smaller dinner. It can make us sleep better because sometimes if our dinner is too big, maybe we're bound to kind of rest afterwards. Our body, is trying to digest. It's using
Right.
energy to break down all those food components. We're not going to feel so great after. And especially if you're kind of taking a nap after dinner, maybe you're not sleeping as well later. So I think there's a lot of things that feed into how good we feel. Something really great that you can do too is take a 15-minute walk. Just a little bit of physical activity can help those blood sugar levels stay more stable after a meal.
And I've always been encouraged because I've shifted my pattern. Even when I have to return a phone call to somebody, regardless of the weather, and we'll hopefully start getting into weather that's going to be amiable to letting us all go outside for walks. But I'm making a call. I'm walking around in circles in the house. I'm just adding that little bit of something after a meal or any time in the day just to add a little more movement because why not? Nobody really is any wiser than I'm going for a walk in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so much good stuff. What about a takeaway for this episode, part 2 of 4?
Yeah, I think when it comes to all these things that we've talked about, sustained energy, eating small meals, whatever, I think do what works for you and your schedule. Don't
Yeah.
fight to try to do something that's not going to fit into your lifestyle. But I think there are tools to help you get there. For example, something that works really good for me is having a library of snacks, breakfast, meals that I can gravitate towards, that I know that, if I look at this list, oh, this is easy to prepare. This is going to fit into what I can do now. Because sometimes we get into the habit of eating the same things over and over again, and we forget, oh, what was that thing that I used to eat that was really good? So keeping that library can be a good idea.
And also being excited about it. I mean, just by you talking about chia pudding and, a little cacao in there, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of lighting up as you're discussing it. And to find those things that you really enjoy doing is a win. It's just a win because you're talking about it because you love it. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Same to you and your oats.
Yeah, I do. I actually do. It's good to see you. Thanks for the help.
Thanks, Chuck.
We've covered how nutrition fuels our body, but not all food is created equal. In the next episode, we'll go beyond calorie counts to uncover the truth about nutrient quality and whether it matters for your metabolism. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to check out more, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, where we post new episodes every other week. Be well.